My name is Emily Carter, and I come from a quiet little town in Texas, USA. Life there was simple. My father drove long distances as a truck driver. My mother worked in a small store, and our family lived with more pride than wealth. We didn't have much money, but we had values, and we had dreams. Ever since I was a young girl, I carried a dream that seemed bigger than myself. Whenever I saw soldiers on TV, standing tall in their crisp uniforms, marching with strength and discipline, I felt my heart race with excitement. Something inside me whispered, "Emily, that is your path. One day you will wear that uniform. One day you will serve your country." I remember once telling my mother about this dream. I was just a child, but my voice was firm. I said, "Mom, I will join the army one day." She smiled at me with both pride and concern in her eyes. She gently replied, "Emily, the road you are choosing is not easy, but if you are brave enough, nothing is impossible." Those words became my strength, and I carried them with me into the years ahead. When I turned 19, I decided to finally take that step. I applied to join the United States Army, and I can still feel the rush of emotions from the day I was selected. My hands were shaking, my heartbeat was racing, but when the officer handed me the acceptance letter, I felt like the sky had opened up just for me. That evening I called my mother and said with tears in my eyes, "Mom, I made it." She cried on the phone and whispered, "I'm proud of you." At that moment, I felt I was walking into the purpose I had always dreamed about. The first few weeks were full of excitement. The training was grueling, running under the burning sun, carrying heavy packs, learning new skills, following orders with precision, but every challenge only made me stronger. I never gave up. Whenever exhaustion hit me, I reminded myself of why I was there, to serve my country with honor. To me, the Army was supposed to be about courage, unity, and equality. I believed every soldier stood on the same ground, whether man or woman. But as time passed, I began to see cracks in the image I had built in my head. Small things at first, little remarks, dismissive glances, subtle differences in how men and women were treated. At first I ignored it. I told myself I was imagining things. But then, one day, a senior officer looked at me and said in a half-joking tone, "Emily, you don't need to push yourself so hard. Your real duty isn't on the battlefield." He laughed, but I didn't. My face smiled, but my heart sank. What did he mean by that? Soon I began to understand. Some of the female soldiers weren't being treated as equals. They weren't always given the same training or the same responsibilities. Instead, they were sometimes asked to attend private dinners with officers, to spend time keeping them happy, as if that was part of their duty. At first I refused to believe it. How could the Army, the place I joined to defend honor and freedom, allow such things? But the truth revealed itself, and it broke something inside me. Some of the girls accepted it silently, because they felt they had no choice. Others kept their heads down, too afraid to speak. I started to feel a storm growing inside me. Each night, when I lay down in my bunk, I asked myself, why am I here? Did I come to protect my country, or did I come to suffer in silence? Am I a soldier, or am I just someone's idea of entertainment? Not all officers were like that. Many were professional, respectful, and treated us as equals. But the shadow of those who misused their power was heavy, and it made everything darker. I remember one evening, my friend Sarah came to me in tears. She whispered, "Emily, I can't take this anymore. They don't see me as a soldier. They only see me as something to use." Her words cut deep into my heart. I held her hand tightly and said, "Sarah, we are stronger than this. We came here to serve, not to give up." I wanted to believe my words, but deep down I knew how heavy her pain was. One night during training, I looked around at the women beside me, strong, intelligent, brave young women. Each of them had joined the army with dreams, just like mine. Yet many of them were never given the chance to prove what they could really do. That was the night I remembered my mother's voice. If you are brave enough, nothing is impossible. I made a decision that changed everything. I couldn't stay silent anymore. If I truly believed in honor, then I had to defend it, even if it meant standing alone. I started keeping a journal. Every unfair word, every incident of disrespect, every misuse of power, I wrote it all down. Then, with trembling hands, I wrote a letter to the higher authorities. I explained the reality that many of us were living through, women being treated unequally, pressured into things that had nothing to do with defending the country, denied the chance to truly serve. The days after sending that letter were the hardest of my life. Fear followed me everywhere. I kept thinking, what if they punish me? What if they silence me? What if I am thrown out of the army I fought so hard to join? But then I reminded myself of why I had joined, for honor. And honor meant speaking the truth, even when it was dangerous. Weeks passed and I waited in silence. Each day felt longer than the last. I had no idea if anyone would even read my letter, or if it would simply disappear into some office drawer, forgotten like so many other complaints. But then something unexpected happened. One morning, an official team arrived at our base. They asked to meet the soldiers, both men and women. They began interviews, they asked questions, and they went through records. At first, everyone was nervous. Some girls looked down, too afraid to speak. But soon, whispers started spreading. Someone had already raised a voice. Someone had already taken the risk. That small truth gave others the courage to come forward. I will never forget the night Sarah came to me, her face full of relief for the first time in months. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "Emily, because of you, I finally feel brave. I'm not alone anymore. Thank you." Tears filled my eyes. I didn't feel like a hero. I was just a girl who couldn't keep her silence any longer. But sometimes, all it takes is one voice to start an echo. The investigation didn't change everything overnight. The army is a giant system, and systems do not bend easily. But it was the beginning of change. Some officers were questioned, some were warned, and stricter rules were introduced to ensure dignity and fairness for women. Training sessions were updated to emphasize respect and equality. For the first time, conversations about how women were treated in the army were happening openly, not in hushed whispers. For me, the biggest victory wasn't the punishments or the new rules. It was the awareness. Soldiers, men and women, alike, began to realize that respect and dignity are just as important as discipline and courage. A nation cannot be defended by half of its strength while the other half is pushed down. True honor is built on equality. Time went on, and I stayed in the service. I continued my training. I continued my duties, but I did so with a new perspective. I wore my uniform with pride, but also with responsibility, because to me, the uniform was no longer just about defending the borders of my country. It was about defending the values of fairness, justice, and respect. Values that must live inside the army if it is to protect them outside. Even today, when I look back at my journey, I feel both pain and pride. Pain, because I witnessed things that should never happen in a place built on honor. Pride, because I refused to let that pain silence me. I realized something powerful. That courage is not only about running into battle or facing an enemy with a weapon. Courage is also about speaking up when your voice shakes. About standing for what is right even when you stand alone. I share my story not for sympathy, but for truth. Because there are many young women out there who dream of wearing the uniform, just like I once did. They deserve to know that their journey will not be easy, but their strength has the power to create change. They deserve to know that they are not joining to be someone's entertainment, but to be warriors, defenders, and protectors of their nation. Respect for women in uniform is not optional. It is essential. A nation that does not honor all its soldiers cannot truly call itself strong. If half of the strength is wasted or disrespected, then the foundation of honor is broken. That is why I speak. That is why I tell my story. I remember once, during a ceremony, I stood in line with dozens of other soldiers. The flag was raised, the anthem played, and I felt my chest swell with pride. At that moment, I knew why I had stayed. I had stayed not only for myself, but for every girl who dreamed like me, for every woman who believed she could serve with dignity, and for my mother, who once told me, "If you are brave enough, nothing is impossible." Her words had guided me from the beginning, and they continue to guide me now. Because bravery is not just found on the battlefield. Bravery is found in honesty, in resilience, in refusing to give up even when the path is dark. So if you are listening to me today, remember this. Respect women in and out of uniform. See them as equals, because they are. Give them the dignity they deserve. A nation is only as strong as the unity of its people, and unity can never exist without equality. My name is Emily Carter. I am a daughter, a soldier, a dreamer, and a fighter for truth. I joined the army to serve my country, and though the road was harder than I ever imagined, I never gave up. I faced realities that broke my heart. I raised my voice when silence was safer, and I walked through fire holding on to honor. And if my story leaves you with anything, let it be this. Never stay silent in the face of injustice. Speak up, even when fear tries to hold your tongue. Because silence protects the wrong, but courage creates change. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Emma English Practice.